Poverty is not just the absence of money, but the absence of opportunity. And the United States is a country where you have both freedom and abundant opportunities. And moving to the United States has given me both. I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria. I came from a close-knit family. I was the third of four children. And the best thing that my parents gave me was the gift of education. Even though I came from a poor family, they gave me education with the instruction that this is the tool that will help me to dig my way out of poverty and ignorance. But what my parents did was that they instilled in us the value of faith, hard work, and not giving up. They made us realize that if you put in the work, you will definitely get the reward. I came without a dime in my pocket. All I had was big dreams, determination to succeed, and the resilience. I got my first job at the age of 14. My job was on a construction site. My duties were to move concrete on a large pan from one end of the construction site to another one. I worked on that day from around 6 in the morning to about 7 at night. At the end of the day, the employer refused to pay me. And the reason was because she did not authorize the foreman to hire me. So I worked from sunup to sundown and didn't get paid. That tore up my spirit. And from that moment on, I decided that I was going to become a lawyer. And I was going to use every ounce of strength within me to fight against injustice, regardless of how powerful the opponent is. I am a man that worked my way up from nothing. I know what it means to feel like you're being unfairly treated, and I'm the person that can stand up to opponents regardless of how big or how powerful they are.
Welcome to this interesting episode of Legal Angle with Emmanuel the Law Olawale. My guest today is an attorney all the way from Colorado, and she's not only an attorney, she practices, her practice focuses on probate law, estate planning, and she also believes in spirituality and the afterlife. Her name is Anastasia Fainberg. Welcome to the show, Anastasia.
Hi, thank you.
Welcome. Can you tell us more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I practice estate planning out of my own firm that I founded in 2019 after having worked for a big law firm downtown doing corporate law. But I kind of found my passion in estate planning after having kids, and it's the experience of it was pretty life changing, as most parents can probably relate to it. And traveling, being away from my kids really kind of sparked the interest in planning and estate planning and the idea of what would happen if you were to pass away and not come back for to take care of the kids. So all of that is really, really important to me, because I also, just like you, come from an immigrant family to where we had to basically build from scratch in a new country when we moved. And the idea of leaving my kids without anything or without a legacy that I'm building for them, and not seeing to it so that they could get the best out of the life that we're able to build for them in this country. That's kind of what sparked my interest in estate planning. And that's how I created my practice.
Now, you mentioned that you come from an immigrant family. I believe that you immigrated from the former Soviet Union. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was 17, I graduated from like the equivalent of high school, I guess, by American standards. And my won the green card lottery, which is kind of a cool thing because not a lot of people win that type of a lottery. So we basically got notice that we were going to move, and we had 2 weeks accepted. And then once we accepted it, then we had just only 30 days to pack up, liquidate everything, all of our assets and belongings, and pack up and go across the world to a new country. My dad had some remote family members that immigrated back in the 80s, and they were in Seattle. So that's where we ended up going. And I still remember I was 17, right out of high school. We moved that summer. We came to the US on, August 24th, is when our plane literally landed. And then everywhere else in the world, except for the US, school year starts September 1st. I don't know everywhere else, but that's how it was back home. September 1st is when like school year starts. So what my dad did is he brought us to like a local campus of a community college on September 1st, like a week after we immigrated. And he just dropped us off and he said, okay, guys, go get an education. And we had to basically figure it out from scratch without knowing anything about the system or how to get an education, because American system is just so much different from the way it used to be in the former Soviet Union, and still is in most countries. There's no, elective courses. It's all compulsory education to become an attorney. It takes you 4 years, 5 years, and then you're done. There's no like different degree or elective courses or anything like that. So just figuring all of that out was a big full-time job, and then adding up the language barrier and basically not knowing anything about anything kind of was like a big stress. But that's why I'm a firm believer that, we go through these stressful lessons in our lives to persevere and get better and to develop our souls for, better and greater things.
Thank you. And what was that transition like for you as a kid who has grown up speaking a different language in another country, in another culture? All of a sudden, you're in the United States. You're the new kid on the block with an accent, with coming from somewhere else. What was that transition like for you?
It was pretty crazy, as you can probably relate. We didn't know anybody. Thank God I have an older sister. We're only a year and a half apart. So she was right about 19 and I was 17. And we were kind of in the same boat trying to figure it out together. We ended up taking different educational paths, but at the same community college that we went to. So it was basically pretty stressful. We only had each other. Thank God we at least had each other. But at first, it was sort of this big stressful transition of like, now you have to learn the language, and this is what you have to do, and you have to make it work. There's no other way. You just have to make it happen. And then those conditions is when, your mindset really kicks in and you're like, okay, I have no other way out of this. I have to make it work. And I did. And I did really well in school. And then I ended up going to law school, getting scholarships, and I've done really well throughout my educational journey in the United States. And that was because I was really excited to kind of prove myself to my parents and fulfill their dreams of giving us a better education. So I was all, I was all for it. I was ready to go, and I made it happen.
Awesome. And when you're a child of an immigrant, they don't give you too much options. You're either going to become an attorney, a lawyer, an engineer, an accountant, or a
Or a doctor.
professor,
Yeah.
a doctor. Wow. So, what was college like for you? And how did you make the decision to become an attorney?
That was kind of a long journey. I always knew that I was going to be an attorney even before we moved. It's obviously a very different system. But then when I was growing up, we didn't, when the Soviet Union broke down, it was basically this big anarchy, lawlessness, kind of the money was devalued, the economy crashed. There was no rule of law per se. It was all bribery, corruption, a lot of crime. So all of that lawlessness kind of sparked my interest in, because all we knew about America at that point was just whatever we could see on TV and movies. So I watched a lot of American, TV that was dubbed in Russian. And I was just like, this dream somewhere, it exists, and apparently there is a country that actually has laws and upholds them, and there is some sort of a resemblance of democracy to the, the best extent that you can imagine it when you're a teenager watching those types of movies. And where I was growing up, there was none of that. It was just like everybody's, fending for themselves. There's laws, there's really no rules to follow. It's all crime and bribery and corruption and all sorts of, horrendous things going on. And my parents were struggling, and basically everybody was struggling in the 90s in the post-Soviet Union area. It was just not a good place to raise a family. So when we moved to the United States, and I was like, well, now I'm finally in a country that has a system of laws, and it has the system of checks and balances, and it balances out the corruption, and there's actually rules and procedures that people have to go through to pass a law. It's not all just based on bribery and corruption. So I was really excited to learn about the system and also become part of it. I didn't know I was going to do estate planning, because I didn't even know what estate planning was at that point, because it's such a specific US based idea of planning with wills and trusts in the US. So I didn't know I was going to go into estate planning, but I always knew I wanted to be part of the American democratic system and kind of help uphold the law.
Wow. And after law school, you worked at big law firms, you worked corporate jobs, and eventually, when you decided to start your own practice, the Legacy Law Group, you decided to focus on estate planning. What inspired you to first start your own practice, and why estate planning?
So that's a really good question. I always thought I was going to be, like my dream, my big American dream was to have a big office, work for a big corporate law firm, have a secretary, have this office overlooking downtown. And I was lucky enough and I was blessed enough and determined enough to get that job. Only 10% of all of the graduates would get those jobs, but I got it when I was still a 1L in law school. They hired me as a summer associate to be at a big downtown law firm, and they paid me really good money through the summers when I worked for them. So I was so committed to getting it done. But then once I graduated and I actually joined the firm, I was pregnant with my first son while I was taking the bar. And I joined the firm, and I started practicing corporate law, trade and export control. And I quickly realized that I was kind of craving more of a human interaction versus just working on, contracts and projects for large corporations and never actually meeting the client. So I decided to stick it out and still try to become partner. But it wasn't that, like, the personal interaction with clients was what I was craving. As an associate at a big law firm, you're just not going to get it. But I was still really committed to the firm. I really liked them. And then after I basically had my first son, and then a year and a half later, I had my second son. And that was the point, kind of the turning point for me into pivoting into estate planning, because we decided to take a trip away from the boys, and I left them back home with my mother-in-law. And all we had at that point was just a basic will saying that something happens to us, we want each other to be provided for, and then the kids, and my parents would take the kids. But when we were flying to Paris in that instance, I had this thought of, like, oh, on like a very practical level, what would happen? Would they find the will? Would my parents have to travel from Seattle, because they live in Seattle still, and I lived in Denver? Would they be able to find everything that we own? And then when you have little kids, it's not like they can go and start paying your mortgage while the probate court process is pending. So all of that kind of made me wonder about what estate planning really is on a very practical level, and not just like signing a template will and putting it on your shelf and saying someone's going to protect me. So I wanted to learn more about is involved in a comprehensive estate plan. And I quickly realized estate planning is not just, planning for death. It's actually more planning for life and getting organized and getting your affairs in order for life and retirement and then beyond. So that's what really inspired me to kind of do estate planning the way I currently practice it, which is not just based on template documents and simple will. It's very much customized, and it's an evolving plan.
Estate planning for you is not just planning for death, but planning for life. Yeah. When did you become interested in spirituality and the afterlife and reincarnation?
I've always kind of been interested in it. The weird kid that loved movies about ghosts and watched all of the documentaries and horror movies, and I was never scared of any of them. Still to this day, all of the people that I meet think that I'm a little weird in my preferences of, what I like to learn and explore about. I guess it was sort of like a natural calling. But then when, like, I would say in my 20s, I really started getting more into the power of the mind and the soul journeys, and I started reading more about the topics, and I booked a few sessions with psychics and channelers and astrologists, and I kind of explored all of it, starting with human design, astrology, new age spiritualism, kind of a little bit of everything. And my own I developed the mentor that really resonate with me. And now I have a firm system of beliefs of how the universe works. Because again, I'm a planner by nature. I do estate planning. I plan people's lives and, their financials and their estate and everything that has to do with that. But I always wonder, because we're part of a bigger, there's, a large planner, so to speak, put us on this earth to fulfill some sort of a greater plan. And so the concept of that also, it just intrigues me. And I developed my own kind of spiritual journey along the path of how the universe works. Where do we fit into the great plan of things? How do we kind of learn our soul and karmic lessons as we go through life? And estate planning is such a big part of it. Planning overall and planning how we live our lives in this reality on this planet has a lot to do with how we pass down legacy that I believe echoes through generations, not just one life.
Our plan echoes through generation and not just one life. So, how has your belief in the afterlife and spirituality, impact your career as a legacy planner?
So, as I said, I believe that everything that we do on this earth is part of a greater plan that our soul has before it even comes in to this nation. And working with, and a lot of people these days, they start thinking about, the power of the mind and manifestation and spirituality and all of those things. And, this is like, I just have to sit down and visualize and imagine all of the greatest things that I've ever dreamed of coming true. But I guess where I disagree or I don't fit in with a lot of the spiritual folk is that I understand the actual day-to-day grind and the plan that goes into it that has to align with your, greatest dreams and the power of manifestation. And only through that planning that you do for your day-to-day life, for your estate plan, for your financial plan, and beyond, only through that you can literally align with your higher self, so to speak, to fulfill your greater purpose that you've contracted for before you even came to this earth. I hope that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, and what is your understanding of the afterlife?
So I believe that that we basically go on. The concept of time is an illusion. That's just time relates to the earth and the planet and how we perceive time, linear thing. We born and then we age and then we die. In the universal scheme of things, all of that is just a speck. The time is circular. So I don't believe in death per se, even full death, the death of like this current incarnation of you. But I don't believe in, a one lifetime where you're by and then you're gone. So I believe that after we die, we basically leave our body, our consciousness, our soul, whatever you call it. I don't get hung up on names because some people call it the soul, some call it higher self, your consciousness, whatever it may be. Part of us that's eternal go on. And it has Akashic records, so to speak, that has of all of your past lives and all of those experiences. And before we come to the planet, memories of all of our past lives deliberately get erased so that we can come and experience this and learn the lessons that we're meant to learn. But then at the end of the lifetime, if we have done well and we've accomplished our purpose, which again, the concept of doing well versus poorly is also relative. There's no right or wrong or good or bad. It's all just part of this experience of this evolving life force. And at the end of the lifetime, we simply just leave this reality and we go back to where we came from, which is the source of all of our souls. And then we, regroup and we come up with different lessons and different goals. And then we come back again in the same soul family. And then we learn the lessons and evolve. And then eventually we transition into a higher dimension when, being human and going through all of the suffering and all of the lessons that's associated with being human. When we graduate from that, then we incarnate in a different reality or on in a different dimension, whatever that might be. But a human experience is very much like a school for the soul to learn its lessons and evolve.
The human experiences for the soul to learn a lesson and evolve. You also mentioned soul family. So do you believe that we select a soul family, the people that we're going to interact with while we're alive, whether we like them or not, that those have been predestined before we came to this dimension?
Yes. And it used to sound pretty crazy to me when I first kind of came across the concept of soul contracts. I thought, this is a little too woo woo. But then I listened to, I read The Journey of Souls and all of the books by the same Professor Newton is his name. And he has a very good explanation for soul families if anyone interested and wants to read on. But it's basically he puts people under a very deep hypnotic state and they go under into, so there's different levels of hypnosis. You can go into your, conscious mind, and then he calls it the super conscious mind, which is where the Akashic records of all of your past lives is stored. And everybody that he's ever put under into that subconscious state of mind, super conscious state of mind, they all report the same experience. They all report going back to their soul family that they have been forever with. And some people have, the younger souls only have maybe a few other souls in their soul family. Those of us that have been around for a long time, we have a larger soul family. But I do believe that soul contracts are a real thing, and that before you choose to incarnate, you know exactly, what other souls are going to be in your life and what buttons they're going to push for you so that you can learn the lessons that you're meant to learn. So your, loved ones' deaths and other tragic experiences, and, losing family members or going through divorces or, um, unfaithfulness, whatever it may be, all of that is pre-written in sort of not a literal soul contract, but you understand what I mean. Like it's all predetermined to where we can learn a lesson that we're meant to learn. So if in a past life you were a bad husband, then in your next life you will likely be, you know, somebody that repents for that and learns a lesson of how on the other side. So if you were the abuser in one life, in the next life you'll likely be a victim, and so on and so forth, until you graduate to having done all of the human experience and learned about um, how to evolve and get past all of the human drama and everything that it brings with it.
I so I understand the concept of having a soul contract with a soul family. How about the concept of the way people die or when they pass? Is that also predetermined?
When we die,
Yes.
no, I don't think anything is predetermined as far as like timing and how it goes. You may even, I believe, again, in the power of manifestation and that you can consciously change your soul contract if you are aware and conscious enough in this life to kind of rewrite it. Because we do create our own reality. I'm a firm believer of that. So potentials exist for you. And again, there's no concept of time. So it doesn't really matter when it happens. It all kind of exists at the same time. But we have freedom of choice as humans. So if you come to this lifetime, do soul contracts and the past life karma that you're meant to clear, but you get conscious enough and aware enough of your, nature and your soul, and you learn the lesson of, finding the God within you, so to speak, or finding the spiritual path. You don't need to fulfill that contract anymore. You've learned your lesson. So you can make a different choice and kind of shift your path. So the concept of like, do we know when we're going to die? I would say there's probably like a million potentials of how any one of us could die at any given moment, but it's through our conscious choices this lifetime that we actually make it happen. And so I don't think any of that is predetermined. It is, so to speak, because again, it kind of all exists at the same time in the universe, but you just choose the path that you kind of shine the light on that ends up manifesting in your life on this in this reality.
How about the concept of communicating with the dead through a medium? Is that something you subscribe to or that you believe?
I do believe in that, and I've actually experienced some of it myself. Well, like I'm not a medium, but I've known some people that are very much in tune with the energy. And again, it's not creepy, it's not scary, it's just understanding that we never actually die. We go on forever. And somewhere, call it like an energy storage, somewhere all of that is recorded, all of our thoughts, experiences, everything that we've done, everything that we have been in this or that incarnation. And there are certain people that are gifted with the ability to tap into that storage and, read through it. And you can call it connecting to dead people. In my mind, it's just connecting to that storage of information, just like a remote, server where everything is stored. And yeah, it could be, my deceased grandmother's experience. All of that is stored somewhere. So a psychic or a medium can just tap into that. They have the natural ability to do that. They have a gift. And that's why they can connect to basically the future. They can read the possibility that's written somewhere. And sometimes they're wrong with predicting the future because, again, we make conscious choices and they only give you one potential. And same goes for all of the information that's already happened, like with people that are deceased. But again, in the grand scheme of things, they're not really deceased. All of that information just exists somewhere. And certain people can tap into it and read it to us. And to a lot of people, it seems scary or freaky, but they just don't see the greater picture of things.
Hmm. So, how do you reconcile your belief with the way you handle clients, especially with the realities of probate law?
Well, with estate planning, it actually helps me get my clients kind of on the right path. Because again, chaos in life leads to chaos in death. And I correlation of that in day-to-day examples all the time. People that are very much successful, organized, in tune with their spiritualism, be it through religion or whatever, meditation, to each their own. Like there's no one concept of how to align yourself spiritually. But those types of clients are the people that usually have wealth and that will actually put the time and effort into creating an estate plan and realizing the value of doing that for their loved ones so that their loved ones can have a greater, start when their parents are no longer there. But then on the other hand, the people that are not very conscious or aware of alignment in any sort of spiritual way, their lives are usually organized. They can't plan. Their thoughts are kind of haphazard. They're disheveled. They have no idea what they're doing. They can't find their purpose. They keep, switching jobs and relationships and all of that. And also, at the end of the day, they're not very well organized. So they're not really my ideal client. I can kind of coach them on getting their stuff together in life before they can organize a good estate plan to pass on to their loved ones. But to me, it goes so much hand in hand. If you're spiritually aligned, if you intentionally live every day of your life, you're going to be very well equipped to create an estate plan that echoes through generations for your loved ones. And you're not only going to have the complete estate plan, you're going to have a plan for any what if in this life, and also make conscious choices to make sure that whatever comes your way, you always have a plan to deal with it. I come from a family of immigrants. You could bring only 4 suitcases with you, a few $100s, and that's it. But I really wanted to make sure that my kids would never have to go through what my family had to go through, which is basically start from scratch. I was really looking for a way to use my legal skills to help myself and families to build that secure foundation for the generations beyond them. Estate planning is exactly that field. What happens to your assets and to your loved ones if you were to pass away or become incapacitated? Our firm's main goal is to help families create what I call a conscious legacy.
My daughter, she's my life, and I hate to see something happen and my daughter not to be taken care of. Even talking about it makes people nervous. But she breaks through that. She has a passion for this job. She has a passion to help people out. She went over every detail and explained it in terms that I could understand. She listened to exactly what I wanted, and then she filled in the legal aspects of it, and I trust her with myself and with my daughter. It's something big to say. I would suggest Anastasia, this law firm, to anybody. There is absolutely nobody else I would recommend.
A lot of conversations about death and incapacity are always accompanied by fears. Planning for it is what's really going to alleviate the fear, because you will know that you took the best possible approach to make sure that you're protecting your assets, your business, your finances. We're an all-inclusive estate and financial planning law firm. We're not only doing your estate planning, we're adding life insurance into it, financial review. We're working through all of your assets. And what we do is completely relationship-based. We eliminate the billable hour approach because I want to make sure that I'm encouraging communication and not discouraging it. And every 3 years, we're actually going to remind them to come in and review their plan, again, free of charge.
We've been married for 27 years. We've got 2 kids, so we just wanted to make sure our kids are protected if anything were to happen to us. So we wanted to find somebody who is a subject matter expert.
You're not leaving it up to the court system to battle out. It's going to make it easier on them. You're not doing it for yourself, you're doing it for them.
She explained to us the advantages of going the trust versus wills route, and we came up with a plan that works for our family.
If I've helped a family avoid court and conflict, if I've helped a family make sure that they're creating a secure financial future for their kids, then I feel like I've accomplished what I set out to do when I initially built my firm. It's exactly how I want to spend my days helping families build that secure legacy.
You are indeed helping families build secure legacies. Have you ever had clients who share your belief?
Yes, quite a few, actually. I don't usually want to get to it with my clients. I try to be sensitive of everybody's beliefs and political, religious, and all of that. You don't want to get into those conversations with your clients. But then, given what I do, it's so personal. Like my clients tell me everything about their family dynamics and about their assets. I literally know them. I know all of their dark secrets and how their families are dysfunctional and how, their kids them and they disinherit them. So it's like we get on a very, very personal level. And a lot of it comes up. And I don't want to put a label on it and like call somebody a new age believer or, like this religion or that religion or following that specific set of guidelines. To me, it's just, I call those people just conscious and awake. People that believe in the power of your soul and the manifestation and the intentional living. And a lot of my clients, I'm blessed to work with people that are successful, that have assets that they want to protect and pass on to their kids. And even if they don't call it spiritualism, a lot of them share my beliefs, and a lot of them are aligned in a way, even without maybe consciously realizing it. But I think a lot of the people these days are sort of waking up to these ideas and are toying with them. To a lot of people, it seems like it's a little still far out there. But then, seeing my kids and my clients' kids and how much more in tune with all of this they are, it just makes me so hopeful that at some point the entire humanity is going to be so in touch with their higher selves that we won't have, war and conflict and suffering and pain. And then we will all graduate from, the human form of whatever shape on earth to a newer earth and, one with love and no conflict and everybody having a really good plan.
How does your belief in the afterlife affect or impact the way you deal with grief and loss in your work?
It's actually pretty eye-opening for me and my clients. And thank God I haven't had any personal experiences, but I do see that a lot in my clients. Some of my clients have passed away, or they have family members that have passed away. And I was just talking to a client today who asked me, how do you do this? How do you talk about death and incapacity and all of these morbid subjects? And I told her, my perspective of death is completely different from an average person's perspective of death. To me, it's not, loss. Of course, it's a loss on a physical level. Of course, it's a loss to your family. But for the person passing on, it's graduation. When they die, there's like beings and people waiting for them on the other side who are actually excited to welcome them back. So it's a graduation. It's a party. And there's actually, some religions that look at it as a big party. They're not going to grieve and cry and suffer. All of that comes from the ego. It's the selfishness of the people that are grieving. They've lost somebody. But if you take ego out of it and you look at it from the perspective of your loved one who has passed away, and maybe they've been sick or they've old or maybe whatever else it was, to them it's a release, to them it's a graduation, to them it's a beautiful experience. So if you take your ego out of it and you look at it from the perspective of spirituality, souls, and us graduating to a different level after we die, then it kind of alleviates the grief.
you. That alleviates the grief. Have you ever had to have this conversation with clients dealing with grieving?
Yes. Yeah. I had a client whose wife passed away, and we talked about it, and he didn't necessarily share or know everything that I know. But he really related to the idea and the concept of it. And I think a lot of people, when you take the ego out of it and you take the pain and suffering out of it, most people, I guess if you survey the majority of people, most people believe in some sort of afterlife or in some sort of spiritual um, beings, be it through like religion or any other way. And I think most people do believe that it's a release, that what the death is not just all pain and suffering and horrible and you're never coming back and there's no trace of you left. I think deep down, because we do have that Akashic record, our DNA actually knows the truth. I think deep down, most people do align with the idea that, yes, the grief will pass. And if you take the emotions and grief and the ego out of it, it's actually not a horrible experience. It's just a graduation.
Have you ever had resistance or skepticism from clients or colleagues or friends when expressing your belief system?
Not really. When I sense resistance, again, I try to be very sensitive of everyone's upbringing and belief and religious. I also believe that just by being open and uh, unconditionally accepting people for who they are, there's not going to be any resistance or any confrontation. When I sense that people are not on the same page as me after the initial conversation, I'm not going to push it. I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to try to convert them in any way. And I respect everybody's choices. And when I give it to people, they usually reciprocate. So even if they don't agree with me, they're not going to push back or me resistance or decide not to hire me based on my beliefs, because they respect me and accept me for who I am. And at the end of the day, I'm a really good attorney and I build really good, long-lasting relationships with my clients, regardless of what our beliefs are. And if we can respect each other unconditionally and accept each other, then there will be no resistance or no arguing or pushback about any of this.
Thank you. Can you tell us about past life regression therapy?
I'm not a past life regression therapist, but I have been through it myself. And I have been, I follow a lot of people on social media who practice it, who have been through it. And I do believe that there's a way to tap into it. And again, Professor Newton he wrote books about putting people into their past lives and even beyond, or like that moment of transition between lives. So I do believe that we've been here, most of us. There's, different soul groups from younger to older. And I consider myself to be a pretty old soul because I've had from the past life regressions that I've had more than thousands of lives in different realities and as different genders and different types of people. So I do believe that you can tap into that. But again, it's all about being open to it and not having any resistance, because all of the resistance comes from the mind. When I had my first past life regression, I thought I was just imagining all of it. And my was giving me a lot of resistance because a lot of it makes you feel like you're a little crazy. And, people that get onto the spiritual path, sometimes they feel like they're losing their minds. And I was in the same boat because it kind of makes you question everything about reality once you start learning kind of and discovering the greater and the deeper truths about the universe and past lives and how we can tap into our past lives through regression. Mind gives you a lot of resistance, and it's hard to break through that. But once you do, then anybody can regress. I think anybody should try it. have to be ready for it and be able to accept it. But I think it's such a great, again, for the purpose of learning your place and your purpose and aligning your life in this incarnation, going backwards and seeing where you've come from would serve you really great if you do align with that.
Thank you. How can spirituality and estate planning work together, and how does spirituality informs better planning?
Yeah, they do. And it's, spirituality, when you, again, it's all about aligning with your higher self and with the purpose or the universal consciousness, and making sure you're aligned in this physical reality involves action. That's how we manifest. That's how we, learn the lessons, is through doing the work here. And a great part of that work is creating a plan, be it a plan for life or a plan for death. To me, that's the same thing. If you have a concrete plan for life and you're spiritually aligned with what you're doing, it's a no-brainer. You're going to have an estate plan that also goes beyond you to your loved ones. And regardless of whether you believe you're going to be here or not, it's from a spiritual standpoint, you have to take care of the people that you leave behind, of your values, your loved ones. You have to leave a conscious legacy. And for those of us that don't, I mean, we see a lot of repercussions for their families, for their loved ones. And, the lesson that could have been learned in one generation kind of gets dragged on throughout. But for those people that do have plans and that do engage in active life and death planning, for those of them and their descendants, it's a lot easier to move through life and be more spiritually aligned and at peace, knowing that they've done everything that's in their power to make sure that their loved ones are never in court, in conflict, or fighting over assets. So it's very much aligned.
It's very much aligned. So, how do you balance your spiritual beliefs with your responsibilities as an attorney?
Me, again, that's hand in hand. I can't imagine not being an attorney and not doing what I do, because I'm so aligned with, I think I can say that I'm aligned with kind of my greater purpose of experiencing the life to its fullest. Because I do believe that your purpose through life may change as long as you're aligned with, the greater purpose of helping people and making and learning your lessons and helping this planet get to a better place. You can be an attorney one day, you can be a doctor, you can be a teacher, you can be whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's about, doing the best work, showing up and doing the things that you want to do in a way that aligns not only with, ego and how do I make money of it and how am I comfortable from it, but it aligns with, the universal truths, how we're all one and we need to help each other. And so you can find that alignment in being an attorney or being a doctor, being a teacher, being a life coach, whatever it may be, as long as you're putting in the work into making this the people as a whole and the planet as a whole to get better, then you're contributing to it, then you're in constant alignment and you know exactly what your purpose is, and that's just to help everybody grow.
Thank you. You mentioned purpose. A lot of people, most of us, we move through life trying to figure out what our purpose is. How can spirituality or the belief in the afterlife or in prior lives or reincarnation help us find our purpose?
I don't believe that we have one set purpose in life. It's not, and I struggled with it a lot, especially in my early 20s when I graduated law school, when I was having kids. I was trying to figure out if I wanted more of a full-time mom versus a full-time attorney, career versus family life, financial success versus being fulfilled as a woman, as a wife, as a mother, all of those conflicts, they like overcame my life at some point. And I was like, okay, what am I meant to do? But now that I am, again, I'm more or less aligned with my higher purpose, I would say. I don't think there's a purpose. The purpose of life is to live in the present moment. If you start thinking about the past, you get into worry. If you start thinking about the future, you get into fear, and that kind of defeats the purpose of living. As long as you're able to align yourself with the present moment and be in it fully and do your best with the best intention, you're fulfilling your purpose. That's what we're meant to do. We're meant to come here, experience life to its fullest, see the beauty, see the gratitude and everything that we do. And that's your purpose. Your purpose is not to become one thing or the other. You may have been a warrior in a past life and now you're an attorney. And that wasn't your purpose. And being an attorney is not really your soul's purpose. Your purpose is to experience life to its fullest, get the best out of it, and just do good. And as long as you have that feeling of peace and alignment, you're living your purpose. As long as you're off balance, you have fear and worry, you're not living your purpose, because then it's just pain and suffering and you're not seeing clearly. And once you align yourself, then you see clearly and you see that the purpose of life is just to live.
Thank you. Are you familiar with the concept of synchronicity?
Yes, I'm a firm believer in that.
Tell us about that.
I actually see it in my life. It's basically a concept, and I don't want to misstate it, but I'm just going to say what my understanding is when, our thoughts have a frequency, and basically everything that we do, all of the energy, thoughts, actions, all of that has a frequency. So the frequency of your mind or your thoughts attracts a similar frequency from the universe. So synchronicity comes when you have clarity in your mind of what you want. So if a lot of people probably have noticed it, like, once you start thinking about, a certain type of car, buying that kind of car, you'll start seeing it everywhere. Once you start thinking about a certain movie, you'll start hearing reminders or quotes from that movie all over again. And that's what synchronicity really is when you align, you kind of have a structured idea of where you want to go, then the universe will bring those events, those people into your life in synchronicity with your thought patterns, so that it just happens. The universe will help you make it happen, as long as you're clearly aligned with that frequency of energy.
As long as you're aligned with that frequency of energy. Sometimes you might even think of someone and the next thing they're calling you, or you dream of someone and the next day they're reaching out to you.
Exactly. And that's exactly how we manifest things. If you're aligned with whatever you want your goal to be and you're clear on it, sometimes people know how they're going to get there. They're like, oh, I just wish I could travel to, the Bahamas, and I don't know, or where. But if you're aligned with it and you truly want it and was aligned with, the universe is going to bring you the means of getting there, and you will get there, as long as it's all in synchronicity with your thought frequency.
Thank you. So how do you see your role as a probate or an estate planning attorney in helping clients find peace and closure after the death of a loved one?
So again, I just, as I said, I do talk to them about how death is really not, death. It's a physical experience, but it's also a graduation. And in my brand video, I always tell people that even if you're not spiritually aligned, or if you're not, at peace with death, taking action in our day-to-day reality is what really alleviates fear. So if you fear death, if you fear, heights, whatever it may be, and you take intentional action, that's what's going to really alleviate the fear. So estate planning is really about alleviating the fear of death, a fear of, passing on and leaving a mess behind. What's my family going to do without me when they're grieving? If you have a plan outlining step by step what they're going to do, that's going to alleviate your fear. And it's also going to alleviate their fear and their grief on a very, non-spiritual, just basic physical type stuff level. And then beyond that, once you do have a plan, then it's the spiritual alignment and, the really aligning your thoughts and your beliefs with the idea that death is not final. And if you can align with that and accept it, then you'll never be off balance.
You will never be off balance. So, how do you weave your life as a mom around your life as an estate planning attorney and as a boss, as a CEO, as the owner of a law practice?
Yeah, that was a kind of big, as I said, it was a journey for me to find my purpose, so to speak, or stop looking for my purpose, as I said, because I am an overachiever by nature, which I think a lot of us that come from immigrant families are. We want to go and achieve and make things happen, and then we burn out and we start having issues, and we don't feel fulfilled because we have to compromise being a mom over being an attorney, over being, financially successful, whatever it may be. So we're constantly juggling all of those things. So to me, that's where my spirituality helps me, is that it helps me just find inner balance and realize that I'm never going to be perfect at anything. I'm not going to be a perfect mom. I'm not going to be a perfect boss. I'm not going to be a perfect attorney. And some days, things will go wrong and my son will throw a fit or someone will get sick. But again, as long as you know that that's the beauty of life and you're to accept and just be grateful for every moment of it and realizing that it's never going to be perfect. We're not meant to be perfect. We're human. That's why we're human. In our actual state, we are perfect, but the experience of being human is what teaches lessons. And so realizing that it's never going to be 100% the way my controlling mind wants it to be, and accepting that and learning that, okay, maybe I'm just going to, stretch out my potential a little more and see if I can do it all. See if I can be a mom and a boss and run my full-time law firm and, and still have to meditate and work and cook healthy meals and do all of those things. Some people, it sounds impossible, but you really align with it and you know that it brings you pleasure, then you start needing less sleep. Like I don't need as much sleep as most people do, because I'm intentional in everything that I do, and I find joy in simple things. And even if it's, if a day doesn't go the way I wanted it to go, I'm not gonna beat myself up over it. And I used to, like 5-6 years ago, that would cause me to have a breakdown. At this point, I'm just grateful for being here. I'm grateful for being alive. I'm grateful for fulfilling my potential to the highest extent my human body is letting me do it. On the days when I can't, so be it. I'm just going to move on and do better tomorrow.
Thank you. So being human is to be imperfect, because we can
To be imperfect and accept it. Yeah.
And accept it the way it is. So how can people reach you?
You have my phone number on the screen. We're also on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. We're kind of all over now at this point. So our website is www.legacylawgroupcolorado.com. Our phone number is there. And if you just Google Legacy Law Colorado, you'll find me.
And the phone number is 303-954-9428. Again, 303-954-9428. Thank you very much, Anastasia, for coming on to Legal Angle. It's been wonderful talking to you for the past hour.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And for those of you watching us or listening to this as a podcast, thank you for joining us as well. Until next time, stay safe. Bye for now.